you've seen that made you believe that you'll never fade. It's a gold mine, and it's one of a kind, and it's knowing how to put your weapons down. Know what you want to say, but you can't find the words. It's a perfect world. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Tell me how you want it to be, and what do you see? Do you believe that you'll never fade? Tell me how you want it to be. Was it something you've seen that made you believe that you'll never fade? In your perfect world, you're too perfect world. You're too perfect world. Tell me how you want it to be, and what do you see? Do you believe that you'll never fade? Tell me how you want it to be. Was it something you've seen that made you believe that you'll never fade? In your perfect world, you're too perfect world. You're too perfect world. You're too perfect.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rock Pile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill, season ticket holder, Drew Gear. This is my producer, Chris Kruger. This is Ryan Lasel of Rock Sports Network riding shotgun with us tonight as we... Guys, you might notice that there's a little something different about the room. There's a little something different about the room here behind me. I don't know, like, let me just accentuate. Where's an open... Ooh,
Probably should have had this planned a little better.
little Woodford Reserve. Oh, we're doing that, Chris. Your store pick Woodford Reserve because you put it right behind me.
You could have grabbed a glass from the bottom shelf.
I did grab a glass from the bottom shelf.
Oh,
Ha ha! Guys, Chris has outdone himself. Outfitting our studio with a brand new backdrop. And I gotta say, I agree with it. What do you guys think in the chat? What do you think about the upgrade going on behind me here, folks?
Teddy likes it.
Teddy likes it, and you know what that makes me think of is Bob's Burgers.
Yeah.
Like, is that Teddy likes it? Of course Teddy likes it. He likes the framing. He likes the fact that it completes the room. Guys,
Fine craftsmanship.
Yeah, the fine craftsmanship. The fact that Chris sanded the wood by hand before he painted
At home. Well, I didn't sand shit. At Home Depot. That's where I got all of it.
I like Chris. He goes, sand before I paint? What am I, an animal? No, he goes, no Canadian booze. You know I've got Canadian booze in here. But tonight I'm drinking something a little special. I'm chasing my Woodford with something that comes from the Northwest, from Portland, Oregon. It's Dark Thoughts Black IPA, straight from our friend Eric Harris. It's one of the best IPAs I've ever had in my entire life. And just on a whim, he mailed me two of them. Why? Because because again, he's one of us, right? He's one of the guys who show up here every week. Nothing makes me happier than when I get tailgates together and I get to watch podcast listener meet another podcast listener and they get to meet and talk about, and I go, see, we all have this thing in common. We do this and we do this. We blather about football. Now, I get to do it into a microphone. Well, some of you do it to your families, and that's okay. We're all here for it. Now, where's the sign with the phone number for AA?
You're already getting critiques in the chat, too. Lauren says you got to put some underlighting.
Yeah, a woman.
A woman wants. Hey,
hey,
listen, Lauren's not wrong. Lauren, that will be my contribution because I will say Chris built this entire thing by himself without my knowledge.
And if we wait for Drew's contribution, it'll take a solid 6 months.
Yeah, I do have this. I have these over here.
Oh, he's got them ready. Okay, he's got them ready.
I think this is 100 feet. This was given to me by Jessica's stepdad. So,
Chris, you and me are going to put together uplighting on this shelf and really upscale things.
oh, cool. I bet the Bills win the Super Bowl first.
Guys, I don't know if you can see this. Chris, give me my single. I want to start a show with this. I had a conversation with some people recently. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to turn 40 in 2.5 weeks.
Ooh, I'm 40 next week. Yeah, man.
Old as shit. Oh, it's amazing.
Can I point something out?
Yes.
I do like that you have no idea when your own birthday is.
2.5 weeks, roughly.
Or the end of April. 2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks, the end of April. It doesn't matter. April 23rd, I'm going to turn 40. I forget sometimes that we're only in March. Here's the thing that I have going on. Right here on the upper lip.
Cool.
This nonsense, like some of you might be like, is that a shadow? Is it just Chris? Did he set the lighting up poorly? No, I have a mustache. I want you all to see it. I'm going to move the microphone so you can bask in its glory. So this all started, but it started off as a conversation. Roy, 61! You made it, brother. That's where I'm hoping to land. Fingers crossed, maybe I can make a splash landing into 61, 62. I was having a conversation with my wife, and we were talking about midlife crisis and what it is, because she has a coworker who may or may not be suffering a thing, and there's some things falling out from that. But then I got into a conversation with my coworkers about midlife crisis. And one of my friends, PJ, made a comment about a friend of his who, in his mid-40s, just went off the rails. Ryan, like maybe you know some guys like this. They make it to the middle of their lives and then they get FOMO.
I think we're in a group chat with a couple of them.
Yeah, right? You get FOMO somewhere in the middle of your life where you decide that you've missed on things and all of a sudden it destroys what is in the pursuit of what might be. All of a sudden you see these guys who are 46 years old who are buying brand new Oakley wraparound shades and they're getting rid of their minivan to buy a convertible in Buffalo, New York, where you can only drive it comfortably 3 months out of the year. And they separate from their wives and they're dating women half their age, and it just becomes a problem. And all it is things that are left unfulfilled throughout the course of their lives. And my wife and I were joking because she was like, nothing? You got nothing? And I was like, there's not a single thing. And I was telling my coworker PJ, I go, there's no, I'm a sort of a nihilist at this point. Like I exist until I don't. Yeah. And that's just what it is. And we're all dust in the wind, just kind of passing through. So with this dynamic in mind, I'm being asked about midlife crisis. And my wife's like, you mean to tell me there's not a single thing that you don't regret, that you missed out on, or you feel like you didn't get to accomplish over the course of your life? And I go, you know what I do? I will say this.
Quarter zip, quarter lip.
When I was 22 years old, I tried to grow a mustache. It turned into a full-grown goatee, but it wouldn't grow in the corners of my mouth, and I looked like an idiot. I looked like I was trying to grow like a version of the Three Musketeers facial hair on steroids. Okay, yeah. And so I shaved the lower half, but kept the lip. And I sat down at my buddy Potter's house, and his father, God rest his soul, Don Potter, sat across the table from me. And when I sat down, they were eating dinner. I was going to take him to Brockport. We were going to go to Flash's.
Oh,
You're familiar?
Okay. Yeah.
You're
Flashes,
familiar?
Man. Best wings in Brockport for a good period of time.
So I get there and I go to pick him up and they say, oh, we're sitting down for dinner. Why don't you sit down with us, make a plate? So I sit down and I sit across the table from his father, and his father, military veteran, just a no nonsense, no bullshit, rootin' tootin' kind of a guy. He looks at me and immediately starts critiquing my facial hair. And then halfway through dinner, he puts his fork down and starts to stand up. And his wife's like, Donnie, where are you going? And he goes, I can't eat with that thing across the table from me. And I go, all right, Don, you win. And I went into the bathroom, took Potter's razor and shaved the mustache off and never again tried to grow one. And from that point at 22, 23, I think it was 23, to now, this is my first attempt and last attempt at ever having facial hair.
Can I ask a question? One.
Yeah.
How long has that taken you?
This is a week.
A week.
I started this Saturday night, and this is all that's been able to fit.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so that's a week's worth of work. That is wow. And the other thing, and Lauren kind of beat me to it, but I have had a comment growing in my head. I feel like maybe you're having the midlife crisis conversation too late with your eating and drinking habits. I feel like we're far past Drew's midlife crisis. That probably happened around 32, 33.
So I'm going to ride this. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Which would have been about the time I was getting married to my wife.
There you go.
She married me on the back half of my life.
And I think it's also worth pointing out that you don't miss out. You don't retroactively look back and miss out on things in life when you've vastly outkicked your coverage when it comes to a marital partner. So I think there's that going for you.
Well, it's also that, and it's also I'm just tired.
Yeah, sure.
Kids
will do that.
At any point, if they were to come to tell me tomorrow, hey, that comet that we keep talking about, it's coming tomorrow. Deep Impact style, get to the high ground. I'd be like, you know what? I'm not running. Get the kids, get the kids out of here. Get the kids, take them to the mountains. I'm just going to stay here and wait.
You wouldn't just go, oh, thank God.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, all right, that's done. But the Bills haven't won one yet.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
You do look like shit. You look like Paul Bissonnette with syphilis.
I love it. I love the roasts. Guys, honest thoughts about my mustache. Just throw them in the chat. But so this got me thinking about this upcoming offseason, the trajectory of the Buffalo Bills. Because when you think about midlife crisis, here's what I think about when I think about Brandon Beane. Brandon Beane has been the GM of the Buffalo Bills for how long now? 2017, but he technically was hired in 18.
Yeah.
So he's been our GM for 7 years.
Yeah, this will be his 7th draft. Yeah.
7th draft and off season as the Buffalo Bills GM. Teddy says it looks like grease paint on my upper lip.
Yeah, it looks like you've been working on a car all day. Yeah.
I love it, guys. Keep bringing the heat. So when I think about Brandon Beane, I think about a guy who's done a lot of things. He's accomplished a lot. He's built some great teams, and he's never sealed the deal. And now he's got a quarterback who, at almost the age of 30, just won the league MVP. So you know it's not the quarterback. You know it's not the coach. You know it's not these. Well, I mean, you can argue whether it's the coach or not that's holding the team back.
Been there, done that.
But what you can't do is argue that Brandon Beane has ever really gone for it. Brandon Beane has been one of the more conservative and sophisticated GMs in the NFL. He has structured every single deal meticulously to line up in domino effect with other deals. You could argue one of the worst things that happened to this football team in the course of its Brandon Beane's tenure here was Star Lotulelei opting out for COVID. Because if his deal had told that year, they would have been able to move on from the following year, which coming out of COVID would have opened up more space. So in the year that we lost the 13 seconds game, he would have had more money to spend on a better D-line. I'm just trying to point things out here. Brandon Beane has always been a planner, and he's always been very pragmatic. He's been one of the best GMs in football. I looked it up the other day. He is the 9th longest tenured GM in NFL history. And the only people who are tenured longer than him are owners who act as de facto GMs. That's it. It's them and a bunch of guys who are no longer doing the
Jones.
job.
Yeah.
It's your Jerry Jones, your Mike Browns, who has a fall guy there in Cincinnati. But at some point during the life cycle as a GM, you have to start getting FOMO, right? Where you go, man, it's cool being in the divisional round every year, but I really wish I could do more. maybe I'm missing out on something if I don't know, maybe this jacket of being the pragmatic guy's getting a little tight. The same way it does on guys who have this midlife crisis and they're weighed down by a family and kids and the constraints of a 9-to-5. And they go off the rails and they disappear into the wilderness of Mexico and are never seen again.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said for Beane is does he enjoy the planning phase or does he enjoy the winning piece, right? How much does he enjoy the winning? And for what it's worth, some solid comments in the chat right now. Like
My mustache.
Spin bringing the heat, Lauren bringing the high heat, like, and Teddy on the Starla Tulele roast. Like these are Lauren, a very astute point there. The mustache makes Drew look like the Dwight Schrute police sketch from that episode where there was the flasher in the parking lot,
Yes.
right? And at the end, he draws the mustache. Jim draws the mustache on the mirror, and Drew then, but then the Drew, wash your face already. Stop the charade. I mean, just top notch comments, guys.
It's guys. This is a struggle. This little bit of mustache has been a week-long struggle, and every morning, like every time I go to take a sip of something and I feel it, I get a feeling. Like, Chris, I'm going to shave this before I leave your house tonight if this keeps up.
The chat's just gonna shame Drew into a shave session.
It'll be like I was 23 all over again, getting shamed into shaving off a shitty mustache.
The good news is that Chris's whole look screams, I have multiple razors for multiple different occasions. He's probably got one that can get at that fine hair that you have growing under your nose.
See, all I have is electric razors. I don't use...
No straight razors,
no
nothing?
Straight.
That's not going to do it because Drew's already got to be down to a 1, right?
I can't use those because if I remove any stubble, I look 15. I have to have stubble.
See, this mustache, they won't let me on a plane or anywhere near a playground. That's the problem.
You should be deported.
They'll let you on. You'll just qualify for extra screening.
So with that said, Brandon Beane has some real opportunity in front of him, and we have to hope that his fans, like, when you see what's out there, the way that he's built this, he cleared up the cap. We have easy levers to pull to build a lot of cap space that's weaponizable in this and the next offseason cycle. You've opened up a 3-year window. The question, in our pre-recorded podcast, we talked a lot about void years and how all of these teams that have gone for it have used them. Except for the Buffalo Bills. We're the only one that hasn't had to rely heavily on void year contracts that are so loaded up that we're going to pay for them for 5-6 years. Everyone's talking about it now, but by the time those void years kick in, Brandon Beane is going to be in his 13th, 14th year as GM? Like, people say the most dangerous thing is a GM who has nothing to lose. If Brandon Beane is still here in 2030 to reap the fallout of tacking on 1 million void years to some wild contracts to go win a Super Bowl, maybe even 2 in a tight window, no one will care, and he will still go down as one of the NFL's best GMs.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking as you were going through your analogies, is the only way he's here for a 13th season as GM is if they've won a title by then, right? Like, there's no outcome to this where he's still the GM if they haven't won with Josh Allen at quarterback. If you don't win a Super Bowl, like, you can't in good conscience keep him on as GM, and you can't keep Sean McDermott on as head coach, right? Like, at a certain point, it's Marvin Lewis with Carson Palmer. So, I mean, you can't, I mean, you could. I mean, we've talked about Terry Pagula. We've done the show, right? Was he one of the worst owners in sports? We've done that show. So, I mean, I don't know if there's an outcome where he's around for year 13 if he doesn't have a title. I mean, this is only cute for so long, right? Until you gotta win.
So there's an opportunity here for Brandon Beane to kind of eschew what his history's been with the Buffalo Bills and go chase something and do what every competitive team besides the Buffalo Bills, who sit 16th in void years overall, still sitting on their books, compared to the Eagles, who have 340 million worth of them, and the Chiefs and the 49ers and the Dolphins and Jaguars and all these other failed asshole teams that went for it and just crashed into the side of the mountain like the movie Alive. Brandon Beane has a window where if he were to get aggressive I feel like he could make fireworks. And if he doesn't eschew his typical behavior, then none of this free agency talk or trade market talk matters, because you're not going to go out and get the game-changing talent you need. You're just going to keep ending up in the situation you ended up in last year.
Yeah.
Where you're great and you're good enough right up until it doesn't matter anymore. And then you run into another team that spent the money, got aggressive, didn't care about the future salary cap ramifications, and is willing to
Most
screw over
likely,
it.
like the Los Angeles Rams.
Yes. And you go win a title. And guess what? No one cares what happens after that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, pack it in, right? Pack it in, blow the team up. You know,
They can't take that Lombardi away from you.
Nope. I mean, and the coach and GM that win a Super Bowl in Buffalo will get a statue outside of the stadium right next to Ralph. Right.
Exactly.
Like that's how this ends. And
they'll also get T.O.'s keys to the city.
Yeah, they'll actually go take them back from
I was going to say, Chris and I will drive down to T.O.'s house. We'll break in and steal the key.
Yeah, I mean, but you're right. I mean, at a certain
Although he's probably pawned it by now because he's Baroque.
At a certain point, you have to take the swing, right? Like you took the swing to get Stephon Diggs, and it worked out in that it took Josh Allen's game to that next level.
Also,
right?
they went to an AFC Championship game.
Right. So when are you going to take the next swing? Because you haven't done it yet. I mean, you could was Von Miller the next swing, and it didn't work out, right? Well, you got to hit. You're 1-2 at the plate.
So then you went and you reset. It's time to take another swing.
Yeah.
And so hopefully Brandon Beane is having his own midlife crisis of being like, look, I'm in what might be the midway to twilight of my GM history. I'm doing a good job, but I'm still missing out on things because I'm not weaponizing the void years, because I'm not getting aggressive with trading away future draft picks that'll be in the pick 20, pick 25 or later anyway.
Yeah.
And those guys don't go on to be impact starters at the same rate top 10 picks do.
Yep.
He himself went on record to say, I don't ever want to be bad enough to draft a Jamar Chase.
Well, and he's shown his track record has been, there's no difference to me between pick 27 and pick 34 because we've seen them trade back multiple times in that situation, right? And at a certain point, you have to take the capital that you have, whether it's draft capital or whether it's cap capital, and you've got to go get a game-changing guy, probably on the other side of Josh Allen, right?
Sure.
Like you've got the offense. The offense this past season showed that you don't need a top tier offensive guy to pair with Josh Allen. As long as Josh Allen's your quarterback, the window is open, right? It's just like with the Chiefs. As long as Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback, it doesn't matter if Travis Kelce is a shell of himself. It doesn't matter if your best wide receiver is Hollywood Brown, who's not great. Your window is open. Now, who are you going to go get that's going to be the Chris Jones to your Patrick Mahomes? Josh Allen is every bit as good. We've seen him multiple times. How many times have we seen Josh Allen go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes? The difference has always been they have one extra guy that's going to make a play on one side of the ball that impacts Josh Allen, and Buffalo has been unable to find a guy that's going to impact Patrick Mahomes enough to go win that big football game.
Teddy in the comments, I'm tired of limp digging through free agency to end up being excited for guys like Curtis Samuel come the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I mean,
he's spot on.
We talked about this in the recording, right? How many times have we sat on microphones on respective shows and talked ourselves into insert name here, right? I mean, yes, it got as bad as talking yourself into Nathan Peterman at quarterback or EJ Manuel as a draft pick, but we've done it year after year. We talked ourselves into Curtis Samuel last year. We talked ourselves into the re-signing of Cole Beasley like 2 seasons ago, right? Like we've talked ourselves into, is LaShawn McCoy got one more year left in the tank? Like we've done this. How many times are you going to have to do this again before he's just going to say, you know what? I don't need to worry about, I got enough. I'm going to go get Trey Hendrickson. I'm going to go get Myles Garrett. I'm going to go get, insert name here, whatever that case may be. But I'm not going to have to talk myself into Trey Hendrickson. He's coming off of leading the league in sacks, right? You don't need to talk yourself into a guy like that. He's done it. He's proven it. So when are they going to go get a guy that's proven it and that guys like us don't have to talk ourselves into being excited about this move because it's the best of a bad situation.
Chris?
Raising my hand like, I'm in class. So I remember 3 years ago, a lot of our talk was about the offensive line. Like, what is Spencer Brown doing? And then we brought in Aaron Cromer.
Yep.
And now our offensive line is one of the best in the league. I'd like to know how much of our defensive line issues is our defensive line coaches.
Well, and then you look at the fact that they bring in Ryan Nielsen, who has a background in that. And, they talk about, he's going to be a special assistant. And then McDermott goes, no, but defensive line is going to be his focus. That almost tells you, like, hey, we're going to bring in guys. We're going to go get guys, and we want to coach them up and try to go win on that D-line because we have to win this. So with that said, the market gets interesting as we kind of get into what tonight's show is going to be. We want to talk about, like, this is our last podcast before free agency. This is it. And then it's going to be reactions and whataboutism and chances you missed, opportunities not taken. But right now, hope still springs eternal.
Yeah.
Everybody still has their postulations and their what ifs, and that makes it fun and exciting. And it's a weird dynamic that's hitting the market right now in the year where the Bills have to make a move. Because free agency is supposed to be a shopping spree. Like, you see some teams who followed the traditional methodology. Teams like the Patriots and the Raiders, who lead the NFL in cap space, like we talked about earlier, simply because there's no one on their team worth paying.
Yeah.
They have terrible rosters and giant gobs of cap space. And so in that way, they're supposed to, if you go back 10 years, a team like the Patriots and a team like the Raiders in an offseason like this should be able to go into an offseason and buy their way to a more competitive record. They should be able to say, hey, I've got $100 million in cap space, and I'm going to go pay the best pass rusher that's available, and I'm going to go pay the best pass protector that's available. I'm going to go get a star wide receiver, and I'm going to remake my team's image in a single offseason. And what I find funny about that is the Bills kind of did that. If you go back to 2019, the Bills and Jets both had like league-leading cap space. And the Jets chose to spend it on Le'Veon Bell, C.J. Mosley, and a bunch of other away from the line of scrimmage players. And the Bills signed 8 linemen.
Yeah.
They signed a full new starting offensive line and then backups. And our team made the playoffs that year, and theirs was far and away a terrible team. It's those types of things that you'd like to believe. And I think our lives as football fans, especially those of us who are old like Teddy, fucking 61 years old. Teddy, I love you. And I love that you show up for this. I love that we all used to think that that's how you build a roster. Oh, you just be bad, tear it down to the studs, use your cap space, buy a new team. The problem is the trade market this year is getting all of the attention and eyeballs and action. And some of the most impactful players in the NFL are being found and gained by other teams through trade rather than through free agency.
Through the draft and free agency.
So now the question becomes, how did we get here? I've got 3 factors, and I've got some stuff to back this up because it's really interesting. First of all, a weak UFA class. Unrestricted free agents in this class are terrible. Barring last minute cuts, there's very little star power on the market right now. The running back market is awful. Raheem Mostert and the artist formerly known as Nick Chubb might be the best names out there. And guess what? He can't sing Purple Rain. So I'm out. I'm out on that idea. The offensive tackle market is just a slog. Left tackles are supposed to be the highest paid players in football, aside from quarterbacks and DNs, right?
Yep.
Cam Robinson and Ronnie Stanley are the only 2 serviceable left tackles on the market. They're your top talents. Ronnie Stanley has a giant injury history. Cam Robinson has been on 3 teams now.
Yep.
It's Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses were too injury prone for the Jets, a team that loves injured players. There's journeymen, right? Like Kansas City, like their situation underscores just how bad this is.
Yeah, they had to tag Trey Smith, and now they traded
Tooney for a fourth.
Right? For an All-Pro.
They benched their starting left tackle, Wanya Morris, for DJ Humphrey, who they signed off the street, who got hurt after his very first game. Then when he got hurt, they had to move Tooney over to left tackle for the rest of the season, went to the Super Bowl, then traded Tooney away. Who is the Chiefs left tackle? They can't go to the market and buy one. You can't get one. Like, now you're stuck drafting one. You don't have one in your roster. The Chiefs are one of these teams where you look at it and you say, wow, I'm really happy the Bills have solidified the tackle position, the center position. Like, this is Brandon Beane being pragmatic and being patient, laying in the weeds.
Yeah, and I think it's underscored by the fact not only, well, it's kind of like root cause analysis, right? Like, why is the unrestricted free agent market so thin? And it goes part and parcel with what these teams have decided is it's easier for me to trade for a Christian Kirk and then work out a contract deal with him versus trying to negotiate against these teams that have money to spend, so they need to spend it, right? Like if Christian Kirk hits the free agent market, he's the third best free agent wide receiver on the market behind Chris Godwin and probably behind DeAndre Hopkins, right? That's probably fair. Christian Kirk, like he's not any better than Hollywood Brown, right?
I want to read you guys, for those of you listening, the top names, right? Because it's all just guys who have one foot in the NFL grave.
Yeah.
It's Diggs coming off an ACL tear, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, and Amari Cooper, right?
DeAndre Hopkins,
Hollywood Brown, Christian Kirk.
Yeah. So then you get into if you're the Texans, the question comes, well, we really like Kirk as wide receiver 2, right? Because Diggs is gone. They've got Nico Collins. They don't need a 1, right? And, you've got Tank Dell, who he's probably not going to be back this season. So you're looking for a 2. So the question is, okay, well, do we go to the market and do we go Devontae Adams at 2, who's going to cost us $20 million a year, right? Or do we go Hollywood Brown, who might be good enough for a 2? He didn't show a lot in Kansas City. We can give him like $10 million a year. Yeah. Or we can trade for Christian Kirk. It's going to cost us a 7th round pick. We're going to pay him $10 million this year. If it works out, we'll negotiate an extension for him, or we'll negotiate an extension now, add some void years, right, to make that cap hit a little bit less, and we'll deal with it that way. But if we go to the open market and you've got the New England Patriots who need a wide receiver, the San Diego Chargers or Los Angeles Chargers need a wide receiver, the Oakland Raiders need or Las Vegas Raiders need a wide receiver. Like the list goes on and on and on. Carolina Panthers are going to need it. Like now, okay, Diggs goes here. Now Christian Kirk is going to garner $15 million a year because what did Gabe Davis get?
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the
Gabe Davis thing.
Right. So like, yeah, I don't want to pay Devontae Adams $20 million. I like Christian Kirk. But if Devontae Adams gets $20 million and Keenan Allen gets 17 and Amari Cooper gets 16, Christian Kirk's going to get 15, right? The market dictates what these guys are worth. It's easier for me to trade and then work out the cap situation than it is to try to bid against these teams that just have boatloads of money to spend, and they got to spend it because they can't go to their fans and say, hey, we're the New England Patriots. We've got $100 million to spend. We're going to hold off a year, though. Right? Like,
no, you can't do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, bad teams are going to overpay.
No, only the Buffalo Sabres do that.
Right. Bad teams are going to have to overpay. Like, New England's going to have to pay guys to convince them to come to New England. Right?
Yeah.
Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore, those teams get discounts because they're good football teams. They're right on the fringe.
Guys want to win.
We've heard Amari Cooper say, hey, I've made my money. Right? Like maybe he would come back to Buffalo on a team-friendly type deal. He's not going to New England on a team-friendly deal.
No.
Right? So I think that's the reason why this unrestricted free agent market has suddenly become bare bones, because over the last couple of you got to stop rubbing the mustache. over the last couple of seasons, we've seen teams rather trade for guys before they hit the unrestricted free agent market. So now that's diluted the water. So that's strengthened the trade scenario. But the interesting thing is, these guys still aren't going for big draft pick deals, right?
No.
Like Tooney's an all-pro and at a need position, and he went for a 4th.
Yep.
Like that's a good deal for the Bears. So I think it's kind of all feeds into itself.
And what's also driving this is the rising cap. So I want to point this out for everybody who's listening to this. The cap has gone up $55 million in the last 2 years, which seems like a giant jump because if you think about $55 million, most players don't get that in a single season. That alone is 2 star players. You were just talking about guys like Devontae Adams getting 20. Well, that's $20 million plus another Devontae Adams plus a backup safety.
Yeah.
That's how much the cap has gone up in 2 years. How about this? In the 5 years since the Bills traded for Stephon Diggs, and gave him a giant contract in the process of trading for him, it's gone up $100 million. That's a 30% total increase year over year from the last time the Bills made a big splash and went for it, quote unquote. $100 million. That's right now 1/3 of the salary cap. Is how much it's increased.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's a whole nother show, right? But like, at what point does the cap reach critical mass?
Yes.
Right? You know, that's a whole nother show.
Well, what I think you're going to start to see is players get their contracts, and it's just begging for one quarterback to do it, to set the precedent that I don't want a number. I want a percentage. Mm-hmm. I want a percentage of whatever the cap is.
Yeah.
And then that way you go into and it's not unheard of, because if you think about it like this, the narrative has existed that no team has ever won a Super Bowl while having 21.5% or more percent of their salary cap tied up in 2 or fewer players.
Yep.
And it stands to this day. And you know how long NFL history is? That means something. So if you as a GM can tie your quarterback to 16% of the cap, you can then try not to run afoul of that rule and still be competitive, because there's a reason it hasn't worked in 100 years.
Well, and the other question is how long before the NFL takes a page out of, let's say, the NBA's book, right, with the Supermax concept.
Sure.
Where, because the Supermax convinces players to avoid free agency or avoid making a mess when they're the Supermax eligible player, right? Like you've got a guy like an SGA in Oklahoma City.
But I think as long as the NFL's
a shot.
I love this. As long as in fact, give me a pour of that while you're up there.
Knob Creek 12.
Mm-hmm. Hit me with a little bit of that, guys. The shelf rule.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're gonna find is there's gonna have to be an interesting mechanism created within the cap for quarterbacks, whether it's a percentage of the total cap, whether it's a separate pool to where quarterbacks don't count towards the primary cap, similar to like the first 51 concept, right? There's going to have to be some type of mechanism created for these quarterbacks, because at the end of the day, like if you look at a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, a Lamar Jackson, like these guys are worth $100 million a year, right? Like these guys are worth NBA money, because those are the players that these guys that fans know. If you go outside of the sport of football, how many normal people know who Justin Jefferson is, know who Jamar Chase is? Meanwhile, how many people outside of the realm of football know who Patrick Mahomes is, know who Josh Allen is, because of relationship statuses and commercials that they're in and all these things. And it's interesting. You wonder how long quarterbacks like Mahomes and Allen are going to sit back and look at LeBron James and Kevin Durant and these guys who are the best in the business from their sport perspective, and how much more money they're making. Like, fun fact, right, Chris, Joel Embiid, okay. Joel Embiid, who by all accounts is a bust. Everybody knows who Joel Embiid is if you follow even partially the NBA, right? Do you want to take a guess at how much money Joel Embiid has made over his career?
I'm going to say he gets those max contracts, so I wouldn't put it past. I'd say it's around $250 million.
So Joel Embiid to date has made at the end of this season, he will have made $186 million in his career, and he still has $110 million guaranteed left on the contract that they gave him, that Supermax deal. So he may never play another game with the injuries that he's got going on, the surgery that he's talking about. They're talking about having to break his hip to realign his posture to save on his knees. Like, we're talking drastic stuff. He's already signed. So when Patrick Mahomes looks at that, right, and he's like, here's a dude who's never won a damn thing, right, may never play again, and he's going to make more money than me?
Yeah, I can see that making you feel a certain guy. And I play a rougher game than him?
Yeah. And my longevity's less, right?
Yep.
Like Patrick Mahomes, at best, he's going to be at his peak until 37. Meanwhile, James Harden's 37. He's a top 10 player in the league.
Embiid doesn't do back-to-backs, correct?
This year, he didn't do back-to-backs. Correct. He signed off a back-to-back. But
Can you
look
imagine starting a quarterback and then going, he needs a game of rest? Rest game.
No.
Maintenance game.
I don't play Sunday and then Thursday. You're going to have to put in our backup for Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, because NFL players have to be looking at the NBA and saying, like, you had to add in a minimum games played number to be eligible for postseason awards.
Yep.
Right? Like, you have to play in, I think it's 45 games to be eligible for MVP, scoring title, all that kind of stuff. They had to put that in because these guys were opting out of so many games for load management. Right? Meanwhile, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar Jackson, these guys are all out here like, I play 56 snaps a game where some of the fastest, largest human beings on earth are trying to take my head off, right? And you guys are bowing out and making fully guaranteed deals at a Supermax, which is 7 years, 300-something million dollars. Like, what are we doing? Like, Patrick Mahomes got that kind of money, but it's not guaranteed. It's not all guaranteed money, right? So, like, at a certain point, there's going to have to be a give on the salary cap for quarterbacks. There just has to be. There's no way they can continue this mechanism. But that all kind of plays into kind of what you're talking about from a free agent perspective. There's a finite amount of money to spend.
Yep.
And there's a finite amount of players that are worth the spend. But because of the way this league is structured, if you're the Bears, you try to remake your entire team in one offseason. If you're the Patriots, you've got a cost-controlled Drake May who looks like he's got flashes. We need to hurry up and sign a bunch of dudes because our window closes quick to where we're going to have to pay him, and then are we going to be able to afford everybody else? So that all those questions kind of lead into themselves.
And then there's the third factor that makes trades more advantageous this offseason than the free agent market. I want to talk about this. Player platform. Do you remember when Drew Rosenhaus had to do the interview in T.O.'s driveway?
Oh, yeah.
Drew Rosenhaus had...
where he was doing the push-ups
news
in the driveway.
crews coming to T.O.'s driveway to do interviews with him. And you look at... That doesn't have to happen anymore. Players can speak their mind anywhere they want. There's podcasts. There's social media. You mean to tell me, look at this. T. Higgins has been trolling the Cincinnati Bengals all offseason. Every time they talk about, we want to sign him long term. He's like, Cap, that's a lie. You don't want me. Myles Garrett literally sat down. He never would have been allowed to sit down on NFL Network and go, I'm never going back to the Cleveland Browns. Yeah. He would not have been allowed to say that to the world if it weren't for podcasts and media companies. James Cook would not be able to be trolling and riling up a Bills fan base that's already very hyperbolic by just leaning into, hey, Saquon Barkley got paid and I think I'm worth $15 million. TikTok, Buffalo Bills. Like,
It's player empowerment, right? And it kind of goes back to what I was just saying. As long as there's a finite pool of money for these big time stars to make, they are going to find other avenues to make money, right? Like the NBA, again, I point to the NBA, and the reason I point to the NBA, you can say whatever you want about the NBA in terms of ratings, in terms of whatever. June's going to come around, playoffs are going to start, and their ratings are going to skyrocket because they've got some amazing matchups going on. They've got some amazing players that are playing right now. The NBA has these players in a completely different realm of player empowerment. When it comes to the NFL, if a player asks out of a deal, I mean, what are the Myles Garrett as an example, but we've seen other guys in the past. What if a guy comes out and says, I want to be traded? What would you say the odds are that they actually get traded? Maybe 60-40?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe 60-40 that the team retains them, works out some type of a deal because there's a mechanism in place to where if they say, I'm going to sit out, you're going to lose a ton of money and then you're going to have to re-sign with us, right? Like, or we'll franchise tag you, or we'll do this. But the NBA, if Jimmy Butler wants out of Miami, Jimmy Butler's getting out of Miami. If LeBron James wants out of Los Angeles, he's getting out of Los Angeles.
And that's where it's given players the ability to force their way off football teams.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? Like it's equitable now. You could argue that this is probably the best environment players have ever had. It just sucks as a fan because you have to watch it like Ariel Legrande here in the comments. Odds that we more or less run it back are far greater than a significant shakeup. Thoughts? You're probably right, because even though James Cook is rattling the cage, it's still a cage.
Yeah.
Even though Myles Garrett is rattling the cage, it's still a cage. And there's nothing you can do about that.
Despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage.
Of course you know the Smashing Pumpkins, but then I come to you with good bands, good movies, and you're like, I've never heard of that.
Hey, all right, settle down on the Smashing Pumpkins. Solid contribution
Tell
to
me
90s
you're not
music.
oh no.
Solid contribution to 90s music.
I remember the very first time I ever heard the Smashing Pumpkins. My buddy Jesse and I were kids in the 90s, and his older sister was emo before emo was really a thing. And she was listening to the Smashing Pumpkins, and she was watching a music video on TV in their living room.
Back when they had those, yeah.
And I remember looking and being like, what are these people crying about? Like, what's your fucking problem? What are you whining about? Knock it off. So with all of this,
I think to answer the question that Ariel Legrande put out there, right? Odds that we're more or less run it back are far greater than significant shakeup. I think the question goes back to
Tank Ninja, trade the house for Micah Parsons. What I love is that, hang on, well, I hate to cut you off, but when I see stuff like that, do you know who the person who kept telling me 3 months ago when I was like, hey, Greg, what do you think is your salary cap guru yourself? What do you think it would cost to trade for Micah Parsons? And he goes, oh, there's no way it'll ever happen. They'll never be able to trade for Micah Parsons. And I go, oh, okay. And then I come to find out that this guy has moved the goalpost since then and become, oh, we should do that. What? Just shoot a gun in the air. I'll just shoot a gun in the air and light the trash can on fire and continue the podcast. What I will say,
I think the question, the answer comes down to back to Brandon Beane, right? Like, what's the appetite for taking the swing?
do you want to go? Are you ready to really bury yourself in a 2 or 3 year window where you have no choice but to win a championship?
Yeah.
Championship or die. And if you don't, you'll probably get fired. Or you can just sit here and keep nickel and diming things the way that you are and working the cap in the... Again, you've done a better job than any GM in our lifetime in the NFL of working a salary cap, maintain, like I said, stacking them up like a game of dominoes when it comes to contracts, and yet never getting over the hump. You will die on that hill. You will get fired for being too meticulous. At a certain point, you have to show your balls and you have to go try to win.
Yeah,
Why not now?
Like Brandon Beane, like you've got really two choices, right? You can take a swing, and you can. Well, I guess three choices, right? You can take a swing, and you can win a Super Bowl, and you can be the GM of the Buffalo Bills until you decide to leave, until you decide your career is over. You can take a swing, you can miss, you can get fired. You're going to get a job somewhere else.
Yes.
Right? Like, you're young enough and you've built a solid enough team where someone's going to look at Brandon Beane and go, that's a guy that we can rebuild with. Or you can sit idly by. You can continue doing what you've been doing. You can be good enough to get to the pregame, but not good enough to get into the party.
Yep.
For those who went to college, right? I'm good enough to get to the party, but not good enough to get into the post party, right? Or the after party. And then you can probably buy yourself another 5 or 6 seasons in Buffalo, lose your job, and then you'll go get another job again. So two of the outcomes, you wind up with another job, just probably not as good a one in Buffalo, and the other outcome, you win a Super Bowl. So I don't understand why you wouldn't take a swing here with Josh Allen as your quarterback.
So that brings us to the part of the show, now that we're 50 minutes into this nonsense, where we talk about ideas that we love and hate for the Buffalo Bills. Things that I love. Well, here's something I hate. Chris just commented to somebody in the chat who was asking about music. And they said, oh, well, whatever. Chris goes, the best 90s rock is Seattle. Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden, whatever. I saw a tweet that struck me and it hit like a chord, right? Because I hate Pearl Jam. I hate Pearl Jam with a passion. I don't have any ill will towards people who enjoy it. I just don't. I can't understand what the fuck you're talking about. And then I hear people who watch the Super Bowl halftime show go, I couldn't understand what that guy was saying. And it's like, you better not be a Pearl Jam fan, because I swear to God, Eddie Vedder's no better. I can't understand a damn thing coming into that guy's mouth. I hate it. I hate the band. I hate most of that grunge rock era. It just never struck me. I was listening to Metallica at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Chris.
You're a DMB fan. You and me can't talk about music.
I'm a Dave fan, but I've also I've seen Soundgarden, I've seen Pearl Jam, I've seen Pumpkins, so I'm right with Chris, right? Like Seattle grunge.
Underrated that I did not put in that list, Mudhoney.
Mudhoney, yep, Mudhoney's solid. Them Crooked Vultures, like there's plenty of solid bands out there. I'm a Pearl Jam guy. I love Pearl Jam. Seen them more than once in concert. But
shoot me in the face but I'll do that before I go to a Pearl Jam concert, much less two. I'll walk around talking like Mumbles and Dick Tracy. I'll do that for the rest of my life rather than go see a full-scale 5-hour Pearl Jam concert.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, that's from a guy who's never seen a 5-hour long Pearl Jam concert, because they're a different level, man. I mean, like, there's a reason that they've been around as long as they've been around. And I think at a certain point it's fair to just say, I don't get it. And I don't listen to good music. I mean, there's no shame in that, right? Like, we're all off on our taste, and you have good taste for whiskey, you have good taste for barbecue, you don't have good taste for music. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
I have seen Slipknot 9 times.
Yeah, I mean, here we go, right? Like that. Like this is what we're talking about, right? The guy who likes Slipknot doesn't like Pearl Jam. I think we're okay on the Pearl Jam side of the fence on this.
All of those were before 2005. I'd like to point out, before they got corporate.
And I will point out, I've seen Metallica in concert as well, so I've been there, right? Like I did the Bonnaroo thing. Pearl Jam and Metallica both played at that. Like it's. Yeah, I mean, it's
Drew doesn't have the balls to follow through with that bet.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So let's talk about it. Ideas that we love and hate for the Buffalo Bills in the 2025 offseason. I've got some things that I absolutely like. Myles Garrett, great idea. It's a great thought. I understand why every Bills fan thinks that this is what the team needs.
The problem with the Myles Garrett thing is Garrett's not going to get moved before training camp.
No,
like Garrett's going to have to show that he's willing to sit out. And
this is a post-June 1 thing.
This is a Hassan Reddick situation, is what this Myles Garrett thing is.
I'm almost offended. Spin a Nickelback guy? A Nickelback guy?
Oh, I could see you listening to Nickelback. I could see you jamming to Nickelback.
It's been a while.
I bet.
No, I can't do it.
Chris, can't you see him rocking to like Nickelback and Creed? Like being all in on the concert like that?
I can.
Yeah,
I guess,
absolutely.
I guess Drew's
live. Drew's a big live fan.
My second ever CD I bought was Live Throwing Copper.
Oh my God.
Drew's idea of Myles Garrett to the Bills is similar to going to a Slipknot concert.
Yeah.
Corporate.
This is the thing that you do. Well, hang on. This is the thing that you do, right? Like, Andrew Barry is kind of fucked here, because whatever he does here, it's going to set a precedent for how he is a GM. If he trades this guy before free agency, to your point, and doesn't play hardball with him and really take him to the mat, it's going to show future stars the team might has, because they're going to go through a rough patch here for the next decade. He wants to keep his job. He has to show that he's willing to follow through on, you honor your contract. If I tap now,
God damn it! If I got to honor the Deshaun Watson contract, you're honoring yours, Garrett.
Every player is going to honor their damn contract on this team, and so whether it's fair or not, that's what you're competing against if you're the Bills trying to get Garrett. And in order to pry him away ahead of the free agency deadline, you're gonna have to really wow them. You're gonna overpay massively. you're going to have to blow him out of the room. Otherwise, you're going to have to do the thing where you cut Von Miller post June 1. Get that $16 million in cap space.
Yeah.
And then wait in the weeds and go, hey, Andrew Berry, I'm still here. I'm still here. I got the money. I got the picks. You wasted one draft. I got another one. What do you want?
Yeah.
And you're going to have to stalk him down for it. So Myles Garrett's not happening before the free agency deadline. And I can't imagine that a guy as pragmatic as Brandon Beane wants that. He wants to know what his options are.
And the other thing that comes into play with Andrew Berry that he has to keep in mind is, am I going to be the GM that holds these guys to their contracts?
Yes.
But on the other side of the coin, every day that goes by, Garrett becomes less and less valuable from a trade perspective.
100%.
Because as soon as he shows that he's comfortable sitting out,
but he's already worth.
Teams are looking at it going, okay, two firsts and a third, like we talked about in the pre-record, right? 2 firsts and a third. Maybe that's the starting offer for Garrett. Well, now Garrett has sat out the entire preseason and taken a hit. Now Garrett sits out week 1. If Garrett sits out week 1, he's willing to take that to take the hit on the game check. What does that offer turn into? Because it's not 2 firsts and a third anymore.
I love that the chat has just turned into 90s music talk.
Yeah.
90s, it's been a while. And someone was like, that's Stained. That's not even Nickelback.
Wrong band.
That's how much I know about
I saw a Radiohead shout out. Good shout out there on Radiohead. Ariola Grande reached out there.
I did see somebody comment the fact that they were like, as long as there's no Limp Bizkit talk.
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable that we've swerved into the Limp Bizkit and ICP realm of things. So, Chris, I'm going to need you to get that chat under control.
I hated Limp Bizkit. I hated ICP. Limp Bizkit.
I don't know that ICP ever got mainstream enough for me. I don't think I've ever heard an ICP song.
I've heard a lot of them, and I can tell you this.
I've seen pictures of you when you were younger, Drew. I don't doubt that.
I've associated with a number of people who declare themselves as juggalos.
You look like back in the day you threw back some Faygo.
I did not, but I will say I was Faygo adjacent while it was happening, and I did not like it.
How into WCW Vampiro matches were you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I saw ICP. I saw ICP on WCW.
Mike Bertham, TRL, Total Rock Power Live. We just count down.
Show.
We count down the greatest hits of the night.
Hey, you know what? You know what, Drew? People from Hashtag have been wanting me to get my own show on their network. Maybe we just do TRL and I can host and you can come on.
We do TRL. It'll be a good time. We count down the 90s. We talk a little football. We talk a little music video. What I know is that when you're talking about trading for a Myles Garrett, at the end of the day, Trey Hendrickson rumors, they're not just rumors anymore. They are now bona fide. The team has allowed him to go out and seek a trade.
Yeah, he's leaving.
He's leaving.
Yeah.
Like, and so when you think about that, you go, hey, I could have a Myles Garrett and I could sell the farm to get him before next week. Or would I be happy knowing that on Tuesday I find out that the Buffalo Bills have traded for Trey Hendrickson for a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick, and we all get to move on from there?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because you know what you do. Do you remember what the Bills got in the trade down from Keon Coleman for Keon Coleman last year? 2nd and a 4th.
Yeah. So you trade a 2nd and a 4th, and you move on with your life with a star pass rusher and say, hey, guess that sacrifice when everyone was screaming about us not taking Xavier Worthy? You're welcome. I look at this and I say to myself, you have opportunities. Also, DK Metcalf, an idea that I love for the Bills. If we're talking about things we like, DK Metcalf is an idea that I like. Right up until I see the tweet about, hey, the Seahawks are looking for a 1st plus.
Yeah.
For DK Metcalf, and you go, oh, hang on a second. I do the thing that most of you in the chat did when you saw my mustache. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's what everyone's doing when they hear what that ask is.
Yeah, but I mean, I think if you're the GM of the Seahawks, like, you've got to start there.
Of course,
right? Like you can ask for whatever you want, but when the market starts to bear itself out, what's the actual deal going to look like? The other thing that I would worry about, and I say this, I love DK Metcalf. I think he's a great player. The question I have is if you're going to continue with this offensive philosophy of everybody eats, can you support a guy like DK Metcalf? Because you already had Stephon Diggs essentially run out of town because he wanted the ball more, and they weren't willing to go that road, right? They felt like the offense was going to be more successful without him.
Mm-hmm. DK
Metcalf isn't going to be quiet if he doesn't get 150 targets a season.
Does not like DK Metcalf.
And this is what I like hearing. I like getting into this with fans where I go, hey, here's a preeminent talent who, if you're only box score scouting, he's a difference maker. He's an attention grabber for opposing defenses, which you heard Brandon Beane in his postseason press conference flat out admit that once they got Amari Cooper, it brought balance to the offense because defenses had someone they had to kind of pay attention to. So you know that they're going to look at somebody in that vein. The question is, how do you get there?
Well, and there's a difference, right? I mean, Amari Cooper's a 32, 33-year-old guy who needs to win a ring, right? Like he's in it to win a ring at this point. So he doesn't care if he's the decoy on an offense. He doesn't care if he's out there. At least he didn't give any indication that he cared, right? DK Metcalf is not going to go to a new team and be satisfied with being another dude on the team or an attention grabber, right? DK Metcalf is going to go to a team and he's going to want 150 to 170 targets a season, and he's going to want to be the alpha. Is Buffalo, and this is a question they're asking themselves at this point, right? Like, this isn't a question you and I to answer, but is Buffalo built offensively? Is Joe Brady willing to tweak the offense to give DK Metcalf 150 to 170 targets a season? Because if not, he's not worth the price. Any way you shake it. If you were to say, yeah, well, we could get DK Metcalf for a fourth, cool. But after the third game, when he's only got 10 targets on the season, he's going to be an absolute nightmare in the locker room. Like, what does that do for your team? That's not going to do anything positive.
He'd actually be a nightmare on Chippewa.
I mean, God, the guy's a nightmare in any scenario, right? Like, he is an absolute prototypical wide receiver.
So Spin, we get it. And here's the thing. We do realize the defense is what's holding us back. The problem is all of the ideas of how to fix that. We just talked about Myles Garrett. Let's get to the ideas. Some of the ideas, like, we've all got things. We're going to go back and forth about things we love and hate. I want you to put your own in the chat. Ideas that you love and hate for the Buffalo Bills this offseason. I'll tell you one that I hate. Everyone thinks they know how to fix his team, and they go, oh, the defense is the problem. You keep Joey Bosa the fuck away from my football team. I think Joey Bosa, even though he just got cut, and everyone goes, well, he's out there. We just talked about all the trade market dynamics, about how you have to trade for guys now, because the salary cap is dictating that teams can hold on to players longer and then get draft capital back instead of losing them to the free agent market. Joey Bosa is a perfect example of this. There was no one who was going to trade for Joey Bosa,
no.
Which underscores where he is in his point in his career. You go down the list of his injuries. 2022, core muscle repair, misses 12 games. 2023, hamstring, missed a game. Toe, missed no games. Right foot, 7 games, he's on IR. 2024, he plays hobbled through multiple injuries. 5 sacks? He's a shell of himself. This guy stinks, and there's a reason they let him go. He's an injury time bomb waiting to happen, and yet I see Bills fans going, well, on a cheap enough contract. There's not a contract cheap enough to take a guy who won't be there. Joel Embiid, the example you just gave earlier, he is the NFL's Joel Embiid. The difference is nobody's had to pay him. I'll be damned if the Buffalo Bills are that team. I will be pissed off if the Buffalo Bills sign Joey Bosa.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Bosa, and I think to the chat that's in that's thrown out here, right? Like Joe Fryer in the chat, an impact edge who's not 1 old or 2 made of glass. Like, go check the free agent list. That
no
doesn't
one.
exist. You know who that is? You know who that is?
It's Hassan Reddick.
It's Chase Young.
It's
right?
Chase Young and Hassan Reddick. There's two names out there right now. This is why the trade market's so hot right now, because there's nothing out there for free agency. The UFA talents that are out there because they're either past their prime, fragile, or both. Or they're a bunch of not even has-beens, they were never was. And so in that way, if you're the Buffalo Bills trying to stock your defensive line, there's no blue chip out there that you can just buy on the market. You have to get really creative about how you approach this. Joey Bosa better not be the solution for one Bills drive. Because when you start tallying up like, hey, guys made of glass, that's who you're talking about. It's Joe Glass, your first opponent in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. That's Joey Bosa at this point in his career.
Yeah, I mean, I think the crux of the conversation is if the answer to your wish list at the top of your wish list is an impact edge, it's going to have to come through a trade.
Yeah,
because you're not going to get Hassan Reddick.
No,
right? Like you're not, because you don't have the cap space. He's not going to take a team friendly situation. Right. Like that's why he made noise in New York after he got traded. He wanted a contract. He wanted a giant big time contract. He's not going to get that from a contender. There's no contenders out there that are going to give Hassan Reddick $22 million a year that he thinks he wants or he thinks he's worth. So it's going to have to be via trade, or there's just not a guy out there that's going to be a quote impact player. What you're going to get is a Joey Bosa, a Khalil Mack, a guy who's a good situational pass rusher like you tried to get in Von Miller, right? So do you
Roy
cut
Collins wants to know about Josh Sweat.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Sweat is another guy, right? Like he had an impact in the Super Bowl for sure. He, had a good season in Philadelphia, but he's going to be another $20 million-ish a year guy, right? Like, because again, it goes back to what we talked about with the wide receivers. The question is not what's his fair market value. The question is, what are some of these teams that have no one, have nothing, have a ton of money to spend? What are they going to spend for Josh Sweat? I could absolutely see Mike Vrabel in New England with $100 million to spend, go to his GM and go, give me Josh Sweat. And the GM go, well, it's going to cost us. I don't care. Go get me Josh Sweat. If you got to pay him $24 million a year, go. That's what I need for my defense, right? And at a certain point, Josh Sweat
Drake May's on a rookie deal.
Right, you're going to do it. You can do it, right? Because Drake May's on a rookie deal. Josh Sweat just won a ring. He probably doesn't care as much about winning another one as he does probably about his last opportunity at the age of 27 to cash in on a big deal. He's got one more opportunity left because no one's going to pay a pass rusher over the age of 30 $20+ million a year. It's just, it doesn't happen often enough. So Sweat is probably going to go big time money. I just think he's out of the realm. Now, again, I mean, you're going to hear other guys say, well, they could do this with the cap or they could do that with the cap and they could fit him in. Sure, they could fit him in, but it's not going to happen, right? Like Brandon Beane has shown no indication that he's going to take a swing at a guy like Josh Sweat. He'd rather take a swing at a guy like Trey Hendrickson, a guy like Myles Garrett, something like that.
So if you're going to swing, don't get me wrong. There may still be, like, if the Bills are in the market for Myles Garrett and then the Bengals announce, hey, we've allowed Trey Hendrickson to seek out a trade, you have to know that the Bills will make a call. Like if you're already in there talking to one AFC North team, you might as well talk to the other one because this guy might be just as impactful and cost less. Now, looking at some of the comments in the chat here, there's one that I find really interesting. Someone says, give me a stout D lineman. If we want to talk about ideas that I love, because I've been shitting on free agency things here for a minute, I love the idea that if Jonathan Allen truly does, because this is what every team does. They float. If we can't trade this guy, we'll cut him. And that's why you trade for a Christian Kirk like you laid out. If nobody gives up a piece of draft capital for a Jonathan Allen, I could see the Buffalo Bills being in hot pursuit of a guy like that. You could come in here, join our defensive tackle rotation, which is ultimately one of the weaknesses of our defense.
Oh yeah, because you lost 3 of your you lost your 3 backups.
Also, they weren't good when they were here. Your interior D line was a weakness of the team last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could go chase that guy in free agency, and it would be cool. No one would care.
I'm back because I'm thirsty.
This wall. Chris is loving it. I love that you built this.
I know.
I can't wait till we optimize it. Get the lighting back there. Like, dude, we're going to pimp this thing out.
Well, Bills are going to win the Super Bowl first before you put in some money for some lighting back here.
Oh, you're calling me out. All right, you're throwing down the gauntlet. Next week, guys, show up for the live show. Watch what happens. So in that span, we're talking about the fact that they have opportunities for a D tackle like a Jonathan Allen. If and when he's released, if you're Brandon Beane, you go out there and you make the pitch. You go, look, man, we need you. Let me craft your contract. Because your first 2 years, your cap hit's going to be under $6 million. We're going to give you a ton of money. We're just not going to make it cost a lot to us in terms of cap. Because that's all they give a shit about.
Yeah.
And in that way, I think that there's things to be done here. I also love the low-hanging fruit. You got to bring back Mac Hollins, right?
Guys, I guess.
Do we all agree, like, Mac Hollins, like, have we moved on? Do we not care? Do we think the team can find another Mac Hollins? Or do we believe that we found something here with this kind of throwaway signing that we thought we all made in that they made in the offseason, and that Mac Hollins kind of does carry this spirit of what this new rougher, kind of more physical Bills team really is. I mean, you watch him play special teams. You watch him play wide receiver. You watch him run block.
You watch him dress.
Yeah, Animal. He's dressed as Animal. He's dressed as Animal from the Muppets as he's going into the AFC championship game.
Yeah, I mean, the concern I have with Mac Hollins, he's going to be 32 by the time the season starts.
That's okay. 32. What the fuck is 32 now?
I mean, 32
for a guy who I don't
32
need...
for a special teams player. You know, it's not a 32-year-old who only runs wide receiver routes. Right?
Your mustache is 32.
As a gunner, I mean, I'm not opposed to bringing him back. You know, because again, like, who's the answer if it's not Mac Hollins, right? But I also think that it's difficult for me to look at Mac Hollins and be like, yeah, you know, he's worth more money maybe than what they signed him for last year. If he's going to come back on the same type of contract he came back on last year, sure, fine. But I mean, what's the level that you say, well, he's not worth it, right? Like, what's the amount of money to pay him to that it's not worth it, right?
And that's it. Spin right here. Hollins' age, but his role. It doesn't matter. He's your punt gunner.
But he wasn't your punt gunner this year. He was your punt gunner, but he was also your wide receiver 1. Outside, I mean, your wide receiver 2, right? So it's like, what role are you bringing him back to play? Because the Bills fans, I would venture a guess, and this, you know, your chat is different,
yeah,
right? In that your chat knows him as the punt gunner, the special teams ace, yada yada. I would wager bet the majority of Bills fans don't know him as that. They see him as a wide receiver threat, and they think that, oh, they found something in Mac Hollins. Like, nah, he's always been this.
No,
right? Like,
he's this guy.
Yeah.
He just had a quarterback who threw him some wild fucking throws. Like, think back to the Indy game. He puts a ball in the bucket to like, he throws it up, and it's a teardrop. And you're going, wait, where is that? Oh, there's Hollins. Where the fuck did Hollins come from? And he ran underneath it the entire way and caught it in the bucket as he was stepping out of bounds to stop the clock.
Yeah. But I also remember plenty of times where on Twitter it was myself and there were others who were screaming, why is that ball going to Mac Hollins? Right? Like, just insert play here. Why is that ball going to that guy? Like, yeah, he showed up in some big moments. He had some big catches. You know, he was largely under. If it weren't for his splash plays, you wouldn't know he was on the offense.
What I will say is this. He's a guy who, when I watch a guy pull another man backwards by the braids in order to not allow him to hit the quarterback, I want that guy.
Sure.
Because that's shitbag football. And that's what you have to play in order to win. You have to be willing to play dirtbag football. And nobody does it better than Spencer Brown and Matt Collins.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that one of them will be back. I'd like them both back. And I'd like them to continue taking Keon Coleman under their wing, because I don't think Keon Coleman will ever be an upper echelon wide receiver.
Can we meet in the middle? And I'm good with bringing Matt Collins back as long as Reggie Gilliam's not on the roster.
As long as Reggie Gilliam. Listen, Reggie Gilliam, guys, can we all agree that Reggie Gilliam does nothing for the Buffalo Bills? I don't understand why he's so revered
He's
by
going
this
to bring
fan
us
base.
a Raising Cane's.
He's not. They already said they won't send it here because they're the supply chain, the logistics. They won't do it.
The sauce doesn't travel.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
We could do a podcast about why Raising Cane's will never come to Buffalo. But the idea that Sledge, as he's known, is somehow worth rostering is baffling to me. It's beyond upsetting that fans are willing to put. They're going, oh no, we don't need Matt Collins, but let's keep Reggie Gilliam. Why vibes? Vibes. I don't need vibes. What I need is plays. You know who gives them to me? Matt Collins.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't need a fullback in this offense. We don't run.
You don't need Jerome Felton?
No. Or what's his name? Patrick DeMarco?
Patrick DeMarco.
Or any of the other fucking fullbacks.
You don't want to run a wheel route to Patrick DeMarco into triple coverage in the playoffs?
From Rex Ryan to now, this offense has never needed a fullback. I don't know why we have one on the team. Bring back the H-back. You know what you do? You know what you do? You let go Reggie Gilliam and you keep Quentin Morris.
Yeah.
Guys.
Yeah, they'll bring back Quentin Morris. I think the reason they didn't.
Quentin Morris is out there as a free agent.
Yeah, but
they won't tender him because they don't want to give up draft capital.
Well, not just that, but the tender number. I mean, the tender number is what, like 1.3 million? Like,
yeah, they're not going to pay him that.
No,
because he's not worth that. But as an H-back, I bet you could put Quentin Morris in there as a fullback occasionally, and he could do the same job any other fullback has ever done for the Buffalo Bills over their streak of success. What are some ideas that you guys in the chat love in free agency? Like, if I want to talk about some things, I love the idea of a Darius Slay.
Sure.
I love the idea of the Bills going, hey, I know that you came from the Eagles and you want to go back there. And I know that you were drafted by the Lions and you want to go back there. But what if I waved a few $1 million extra in front of your face and said, oh, hey, by the way, you could play in the AFC title game again next year?
Yeah. Yeah, spin got me. I'm drinking Drew's pace at this point. So yeah, the tender amount was like the 3.3, 3.1. I inverted my numbers on that. My bad, Spin. Thanks for keeping me honest as always.
Spin's hilarious. Hey, Spin, did you get the rub? You never answered me because you're an ass. So with that said, I look at this and I think about the things that I like and things I hate. One of the ideas I hate is signing a big money safety, Javon Holland. That idea somehow got traction here among Bills fans. How quickly did that evaporate when people found out he wanted $15 million a year?
Yeah, we talked about that in the pre-recorded show. That number is absolutely outrageous, and I think they can find better ways to address a safety position than $15 million for. Would you rather pay $15 million for Javon Holland or $15 million for James Cook?
James Cook, and it's not even like I wouldn't even think about that.
Yeah,
if I'm the GM. And I sit down with James Cook and his agent, and he goes, $15 million. And I say, hey, $10 million. And he goes, nah, 15 now that Saquon signed his deal. And we say, okay, fine. Fuck you, Saquon. We're thinking around 13.5. And then someone goes, hey, but what about the fact that you could sign Javon Holland for the same money?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
how stupid do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, James Cook is kind of like the Seahawks asking for a first plus for DK Metcalf, right? Like, yeah, ask for $15 million, but go look and see who's going to give you $15 million, right? Like, you can make $15 million if you want to go play for, I don't know, New England, Like, they might give you $15 million a year, but do you want to go play in New England? Or do you want to go play for the Jets? They might give you $15 million a year. But if you want to play for a team that's dead set on winning, like, let's be realistic. You're not Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
End of story. Like, are you Saquon Barkley? Because if the answer is no, then the conversation stops here, and we're going to tell you what we think you're worth.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, we got rid of Devin Singletary for you, and yeah, you were a big upgrade, you know, a bigger upgrade over him, but you're not irreplaceable. I mean, this by all accounts is a massive wide running back class in college. And next year could be even better.
Well, and this is where you talk about asset expenditure. Because every single person who says, hey, I can replace James Cook, and this is where we talk about, where is Brandon Beane's head? How aggressive do you want to be, and where does he see the build of the team? Because you can't say, hey, I'm going to trade for a pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson, and then be a fan of that move and also say, well, I'll just let James Cook walk because we can replace him with what pick? If we traded for Hendrickson, we probably had to give up the first, and we probably had to give up a second, and then that's it. Maybe, it's over. Yeah. Maybe a fourth. Maybe they take a fourth and a fourth next year, or a second and a second next year. I don't know. But the idea becomes, well, in a class that's laden with defensive line talent, you traded away your picks for a pass rusher. You still need to fix the interior, and there's still probably BPA if you're just going best player available. Your second round pick probably will be a defensive tackle at best player available, or an edge rusher, or a defensive player, because the draft is deep in that.
I think what you're pointing out is, I would much rather choose between a pass rusher and a running back than what Cincinnati's having to do and choose between a pass rusher and a wide receiver.
Yes.
Because you could make the argument that a pass rusher is equally as important as a wide receiver, a top flight wide receiver, which by all accounts, I mean, T. Higgins is, let's be honest, he's a wide receiver one on all but maybe 10 teams in the NFL, right? Like, he's that good of a wide receiver. But let's not act like James Cook is not replaceable.
No.
Right? And he's replaceable. It doesn't have to be a draft pick this year. It can be a next year, because rookie running backs make impacts all the time. All the time. I mean, from a fantasy football perspective, this past season is the first time in the last 10 years that there hasn't been at least 3 rookie running backs that finished in the top 24 of fantasy football points. So rookie running backs make impacts every year. You've still got Ray Davis on the roster, who is a good running back, maybe a great running back if you give him more touches.
Not just
James
good, but great,
Cook
but
is
also
disposable.
Also, Ray Davis, when you look back at his touches, and I have to quote, like, I have to credit Bruce Nolan for this. He pointed out that Ray Davis ran against, like, he was in the upper echelon of running backs going up against heavy boxes for the entire season. The Bills ran him very selectively, and they picked him when they knew James Cook couldn't hack this scenario.
Yeah.
But we need rushing yards, and we need somebody who can carry this out.
Yeah, I think if you went down the list, and I haven't done the exercise, I would be interested in doing the exercise. If you went down the list of 1,000-yard running backs, and then you went down the list of 14-plus sack defensive ends, you would run out of defensive ends before you ran out of running backs. And that's where a decision between Trey Hendrickson and James Cook, that's not a decision.
No.
Right? Like, that's a no-brainer.
And so where you run into trouble is, what do you do with this guy? Well, I'll tell you what you do is you have a Cincinnati team that needs a running back.
Well, they got Chase Brown. I mean, they got Chase Brown, right?
They have Chase Brown, but he's coming off a significant injury, and they're looking for another answer. And you go, hey, guys, do you want something to complement this offense, since that seems to be all you give a shit about? Here's another thing. Maybe it softens the blow of that trade. At the same time, maybe you pay him, but you pay him and you negotiate it down to $10 million.
Or
I'm okay with that.
Or you trade for Trey Hendrickson. you've got another year. I mean, you're not up against it with James Cook, right? He's coming back next season because he's not going to sit out on a rookie deal. That does not work out for running backs. Sitting out a contract situation does not work out for running backs.
Look at Le'Veon Bell.
You've got another year in James Cook. Swing the bat. Take the shot for Trey Hendrickson. Maybe you win a title, and then you tell James Cook good luck, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you let James Cook walk. He could go out. Listen, if you sign Trey Hendrickson, trade for Trey Hendrickson, let's just scenario. Trey Hendrickson comes in, 17 sacks on the season, right? Like a modest season for him. He led the league in tackles. He comes out 16, 17 sacks. James Cook comes out, and let's say he has an uptick in production and he's a 1,800-yard all-purpose back, and you win a Super Bowl. Are you going to cry over the fact that James Cook walks away because he wants more money than you're able to pay him or willing to pay him? No. Nobody's going to cry over James Cook walking away if it results in a title, right? So you don't need to address the James Cook situation this year, but you have to address the pass rush situation this year. Like, it's got to happen. So, I mean, the either or, I mean, doesn't exist right now for the Buffalo Bills. They don't have to make a decision on James Cook. They got another year of him.
What's the worst?
And frankly, it doesn't cost a lot to franchise a running back if you have to either.
What's the worst decision the Bills could make this upcoming week? What's the worst thing they could do in your mind?
I think the worst thing that they could do. Let's
get it all out.
Yeah,
I think expel the demons.
The worst thing that they could do for me is try to address defensive end through free agency and overpay.
Yes.
Right. And if the swing is we don't want to give up the draft capital for a Trey Hendrickson, so we're going to take a swing and we're going to pay, I don't know, like insert name here,
guys.
Khalil Mack.
The market is Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Draymond Jones, Hassan Reddick, Matt Judon. I'd love a Matt Judon if it came at like nickels.
Yeah.
If I'm paying next to nothing for this.
Yeah.
We're going 132 proof. Should probably think about shutting it down.
Because I should think about shutting it down. It's literally like, guys, there are terrible ideas and then there's terrible ideas.
Yeah, I mean the other thing I could say that would be worse.
Preston Smith has been rumored to be a player that the Buffalo Bills are in on. I think that would qualify as one of the worst ideas the Bills could have.
The other would be, because this is a weak wide receiver class, trying to address wide receiver in free agency and going after a Mike Williams.
No,
right? Like a guy like that.
Don't do that.
And just, trying to say, hey, we're going to sign Mike Williams, $4 or $5 million a year because he's coming off of an injury, and hope that that's enough. Right? Like I struggle. What I would prefer that they do in this week of free agency is really address depth at need positions, corner, safety if you're going to, defensive line. I'm okay with depth pieces there.
Yeah.
Right? The swings need to come using your draft capital, whether it's through trade, whether it's trading. You talked about it in the show, trading up.
So Spin, your comment that you just made about trading up, like, oh, Groot's the best thing. Okay. We talked about in the show we recorded before this about how weaponizing, rather than trying to go out and swing for the fences for, if you literally can't nail down a deal with one of these teams to go get an established name, trading up in the draft for a guy like Michael Williams, you know who he gets comped to all the time in terms of his run game defense? Is Greg Rousseau. Except he has more bend, more wiggle, more speed. He's a better pass rusher than Greg Rousseau is, but he's just as stout against the run. It almost seems like that might be the thing. If you were going to trade into the top 12 of the draft for a player, that's the thing you go do, and you bookend him, but then you go out into free agency and you go find yourself another guy.
Yeah.
We talked about it in depth. We talked about all the options. You're going to have to go listen to that one. But Spin, you're not far off. I like that. And then he goes, draft 10 defensive tackles in this draft. Guys, D-tackle is a weakness of this team, and I don't understand how we haven't addressed it already. But the free agent market isn't where you're going to do that. Like, right now, Roy Robertson Harris, like Sheldon Rankins, BJ Hill, everybody's fucking old. Or you're Javon Kinlaw. who's old, who's young, but what have you done?
Unproven. Right.
Nothing that the defensive this is the first time in a long time where if you don't trade for a talent, they don't make it to the free agent market.
Right.
And the free agent market sucks. So we know we're going to beast the Patriots this year because they have all the cap space in the world, but they know they need to draft players. So they're not going to be aggressive the way they need to. They're not going to trade for Trey Hendrickson.
No, they're not. No, they're not a trade. They're not trade candidates right now. No.
They're going to draft. And then they're going to use their cap space to try to buy quality players. And it's going to result in a mediocre roster.
I mean, I think they're hoping for mediocre, right? I mean, they're hoping, they're hoping to put pieces around Drake May so he can continue to develop. And knowing Mike Vrabel, he's probably going to try and build this team from the inside out. And none of those are going to be sexy players, right? Like, yeah, Drake May's probably going to be upright more this season, but he probably still won't have anyone to throw the football to because, Amari Cooper's not going to New England, right? No. Devontae Adams isn't going to New England. So they're going to wind up with Robert Woods at wide receiver, right? So that type of player, but he's going to try and, knowing Vrabel, he's probably going to try and build this team from the inside out, which, right, wrong, or indifferent, smart. That's a way, right? The one way is build it inside out, one way is to build it outside in.
It's like what Buffalo the Bills did in 2019.
Yeah.
So it can work. It's just the concept of we're not them. And I'm so happy we're not. And none of this will work for the Buffalo Bills. There isn't a single defensive tackle out there on the market right now. Like the Cover One guys will tell you that they love that Sebastian Joseph Day, whatever the fuck his name is. I don't give a shit. I don't care. There's not a defensive tackle out there on the market right now that I care about. None of it matters. What I think is you trade for some guys. You have to make a trade at some point. Beane has to go, hey, I want this or I want that. Otherwise, all you're doing is you're saying, hey, I'm willing to kick the can down the road again another year before I make any aggressive decisions to get into that upper echelon conversation where every team that's competed for a Super Bowl for the last 5 years has put their money and time and energy and blood and sweat and tears into.
Right. I mean, how many times can you just say we're going to run it back because we were good enough to get to the AFC title game last year? We're going to run it back, right? Like you can't continue to do that. You can't continue to be satisfied with almost getting there. Like you've got to get there at a certain point. And if Beane doesn't have the stomach for it, then you've got to find a guy who's got the stomach for it. Yeah. So Spin's got a good point. If Beane's ever going to have a home run, then this is a draft to do it. The issue, Beane has shown no indication that he drafts well enough to have a home run of a draft, right? Like he just doesn't draft his top picks, his first picks in the draft. He's better at the
back end than the front end.
He's better on late day 2, day 3 than he's been day 1, early day 2.
So with this in mind, if we don't want this to end up like every other year, Brandon Beane is going to, hey, can you give me my single? Brandon Beane is going to have to do this. He's going to have to grow a shitty mustache. And he's going to have to adopt a mentality he's not comfortable with. But it might be the thing that saves this football team. It might be the thing that propels us to a title if Brandon Beane just gets uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's making everybody uncomfortable. So maybe somebody just send him a clip of that, of you stroking your week-old mustache.
If he just gets uncomfortable.
Who wants a mustache ride? And starts I want fun. I want fun.
And just starts diving into what he thinks he should do to make this team competitive. Because there's a ton of options out there. It all comes down to his appetite to stray from stacking dominoes and instead build a house of cards.
How much of a lack of trust would you have in a GM if they came out to their opening press conference and had a mustache like that? There's no way you would not look at that guy and be like, yeah, I trust him to run a football team. I trust him to win football games. Like, absolutely. He's for sure going to make the right decisions when it comes to player personnel. Guys, he's clearly making wonderful life decisions for himself. Surely he can run an NFL franchise.
If you have a mustache like this, Chris, give me my single. If you have a mustache like this.
So that means for most people, by 3 p.m. on a day you shave,
If you have a mustache like this and you're still in charge of anything, you're doing something right.
Are you though?
Doing something right.
Are you though?
Like some people, like I've heard police say, hey, this is where I derive a lot of my authority from. Yeah? Well, I'll tell you what. I have a lot of authority. It doesn't come from here.
No.
It sure as hell doesn't come from
No. In fact, you have to hang tighter to your authority when you have a mustache like that. Because it's going to be constantly slipping from your grasp.
Guys, I want to know. Tweet at us at RockPowReport. Email us, rockpowreport716@gmail.com. I want to know, what is your best and worst idea for the Bills free agency? Spin
Call
knows,
in, leave a voicemail.
No, Spin knows. I make good on my bets. Whoever sends me the best idea, the one that resonates with me most, I'll send you a selection from our Q42 barbecue stash. I love it. I can't wait to do it. I love the fact that you all show up for this nonsense. But for tonight, we got to get the hell out of here. We've been at this for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. That's Ryan Lasel. And this has been your Rock Power Report. I'll see you on the other side.